So I want to start with showing a picture that is about looking at different countries and looking at what do they eat and what is the mortality rate, the death rate coming from heart attacks. So this is a data from 1999 collected by the World Health Organization and NIH, National Institute of Health from the US. They looked at the per capita national average consumption of plant foods, unprocessed, wholesome plant foods of different countries across the board. And then they looked at the death rate in those countries due to heart attack. So what they're looking at is if for example, a country's national average calorie intake is 2,000 calories. Let's say there's a nation where average caloric intake per capita is 2,000 calories. They're looking at what percentage of those 2,000 calories are coming from plant foods. That's the percentage number you're looking at. So what you're seeing in the green bars is basically a percentage of calories coming from plant foods for the total calories taken by that nation. And what you're seeing in the red bar is mortality rate from heart attacks, so deaths caused by heart attacks. So if looking at different countries, you can clearly see that as the consumption of plant foods, high fiber, fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes increases, the mortality rate decreases. So it's kind of one way to look at big picture. You know, when in science we look at a scientific inquiry, we look at finding a fact in science. You know, we start with we have to start somewhere in any investigation. So we start with big picture. We look at, okay, where is this happening? What's the pattern? Okay, if in this country, in Thailand or Laos, there is so much less heart attack and they're eating a lot of this kind of foods, is there something going on? Is there a connection there? And then you dive deeper into analyzing it using additional research that confirms or rules out the suspicion there. So that just gives an idea of how to look at these things. This image is really kind of a cut section of an artery. You can imagine an artery in your heart or an artery in the neck that supplies the blood flow to the brain. And what you're seeing is it's like an onion a layer of going from outside to inside. You have the outer coat of the artery, and then there is an elastic tissue that can shrink the artery and open up. And then you have the inner lining called endothelium. Now that's the word I would like you to remember. It's a technical term, but it's basically the innermost lining of the artery. And that is where everything is decided whether somebody is going to have a heart attack or not. So if you're going to go home and saying, I need to make sure I'm not going to get a heart attack going forward, you need to make sure that your endothelium is protected and safe and healthy. It's as simple as that. So everything that happens in the artery, whether somebody is going to get blockage in the artery, or whether that artery is going to come to rescue when you're putting extra demand on the heart. Let's say somebody is shoveling snow, or you're running 2 miles which you never ran, or you're pushing yourself harder in your physical activity. Your heart is racing faster, the heart is beating faster, which means the heart is working harder. And so the heart is saying, I need more oxygen, I'm working really hard, so I need more blood flowing into my own muscles. So the heart muscle is going to demand more blood flowing into it because it's going to need more oxygen to keep beating, to supply that energy that's needed to the muscles if you're running, or to your hands if you're shoveling. Does that make sense so far? So what that means is that during extra effort, physical effort, when the heart is running faster, the artery should be able to supply the extra demand placed for additional blood to flow into the heart. Does that make sense? So the heart has to have the ability to have arteries that are ready to open up to allow more blood to come in when there is a demand and when there is an extra demand for it. So if the artery is stiff and it's not able to open up to allow more blood to come in, more oxygen to come in, that heart is not able to get the blood flow and oxygen that it needs during that moment when somebody is shoveling, when somebody is running. And that's the person who holds the chest and falls down with a heart attack because their arteries failed to open up and allow more blood to come in. Does that make sense so far? So that means their endothelium has been not working good enough to make that opening happening because endothelium, that lining produces a gas called nitric oxide, and it's the nitric oxide that opens the arteries and allows more blood flow to come in. If the endothelium is not healthy, then the lining of the artery will not produce enough nitric oxide to open the arteries to allow more blood flow, and that person suffers an angina or a chest pain. So primarily, the most important broken part that leads to a heart attack is the endothelium. That's the deal breaker if the endothelium is healthy or not. And damage to the endothelium from eating animal foods, processed fast foods, excess salt and sugar will clog the arteries. I'm sorry, some of the words are getting cut out there, but I'll read it out. And so you can see a clean artery, a cut section of it, where the blood can flow really well, and you can see the blockage, the clog that's building up there with the cholesterol and some white blood cells that come in. They all start to build up plaque, and it clogs the arteries. So any kind of injury leads to inflammation in the body. Inflammation is a reaction the body puts out to any form of insult or injury coming into the body. So if it is a viral infection in the lungs, it's called bronchitis, right? So the injury is caused by a virus. The inflammation type is bronchitis. If the injury is caused by alcohol and it is irritating the stomach, the inflammation is gastritis, right? The same way, if we make unhealthy food choices every day, it leads to all sorts of chronic diseases. They're all connected by a common thread, common link of inflammation. So unhealthy food choices leads to inflammation, and the inflammation can lead to heart attacks and cancer and diabetes and all of them. So and all of them are pretty much the same problem with different names and different faces. So this slide is pretty much saying the same thing, saying chronic inflammation, which is long-term undercurrent of inflammation that's happening in the body because we didn't make the right choice during breakfast. We didn't make the right choice during our lunch, our snack, our dinner, and we do this every day, all year. There is a kind of an undercurrent of slow buildup of inflammation that happens over the years that leads to any one of these diseases or a combination of diseases, including cancer, arthritis, heart attacks, cardiovascular diseases, lung disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's, which are both connected. Now we know that Alzheimer's disease is type 3 diabetes, so it's all connected into one thing. So if we need to take care of all of these diseases, you just need to take care of reducing inflammation in the body. It's like a one-stop shop. If somebody was here in the last lecture, last weekend, I was telling, it's basically, if we go at the root cause, if we go upstream to take care of issues, then we take care of all of these issues that happens downstream, right? Prevention. So this is going to show you a little bit on how inflammation leads to cholesterol buildups and how that can lead to blocked arteries. So when there is more inflammation due to unhealthy food choices, there is something called cholesterol traffic that happens in the body, and that is a normal path, normal traffic flow that happens, where when we get cholesterol that is building up, and when we eat cholesterol-rich foods, especially animal foods, that body has ways to kind of make sure that that doesn't build up in the bloodstream, because we don't want cholesterol building up in the blood vessel or bloodstream, right? Everybody agree to that? Basic, right? So cholesterol needs to be moved away from bloodstream whenever possible. The body does it in two ways. The best way, the ideal way, is for the body to eliminate it in our stools. So that's the best way, because there is something called a biliary circulation, where the bile puts out these cholesterol molecules into the small intestine through a connection that we have. It's called a biliary circulation, and the bile will dump the cholesterol molecules into the um, small intestine, and it's eliminated. And that's the best way to get rid of cholesterol. That's the ideal way to do it. And when everything is working well in your body, that'll happen. So the cholesterol won't build up. When we start eating foods that are excessive of cholesterol buildup, excessive of inflammation, the cholesterol traffic goes wrong, and there is something called ABC transporter proteins. And it looks like I made up the name ABC, but it's actually called ABC transporter protein. And those transporter proteins make sure that the cholesterol traffic is done correctly and it's moved away from the arteries. When there's more inflammation, these transporter proteins don't work well, so the cholesterol starts to build up in the blood. So the body comes into rescue. It says, okay, it cannot be in the blood. We have to pack it away somewhere else. It's not working. The transporter protein is not working well. So it starts to pack away in the liver, right? That's called fatty liver. Fatty liver is the beginning manifestation that person has excess inflammation, that person has excess cholesterol building up, body doesn't know where to pack it away, it doesn't want to put it in the blood vessels, it's packing away in the liver. That's kind of the next best it can do, but it also leads to issues where the liver cannot function really well. So, and then that mechanism gets exhausted, and the fatty liver can do only so much of, taking so much of cholesterol, and then that person starts to build up plaques or blockage in the artery itself, like the image that we showed. Does that make sense so far? So cholesterol traffic goes wrong with inflammation. The excess cholesterol builds up. It leads to some additional changes in the blockage itself. It's called oxidation of the cholesterol molecules. It's a kind of a biological stress that happens in there, which leads to more inflammation. That leads to the blockage becoming very unstable. So not only the blockage is building up and becoming bigger and bigger in the artery, but the blockage itself is becoming what is called as unstable. This is not remaining stable in that sense that it can rupture open on a given day when there is extra stress. So that person, let's say that person is shoveling snow to a degree that they have never done. That person is running extra mile that they've never done. They're climbing stairs that they've never done with heavy bags. And that person on that particular day could have a shear force on that blockage. It can open up the blockage, it can rupture it, and in a matter of 20 to 30 minutes, the entire artery gets blocked because the blood cells all come together in that place called platelets. They start to become sticky, and there is no more room for blood to go through that in a matter of 20 to 30 minutes. So that person gets a heart attack. So the sequence is, all of this is happening over decades, really. So decades of unhealthy food choices leading to inflammation that builds up over decades, leading to cholesterol that is traffic that's gone wrong, body not able to keep the cholesterol away from the arteries. It tries to pack in the liver, then it can't do it anymore. And then it leads to building up of the blockage, rupture on a given day when that person, on an unfortunate day, gets a heart attack. So everything that happens in this sequence is related to the food that we eat. In other words, the choices that we make determines whether somebody is going to have inflammation. The choices that we make determines whether we can counter or negate the oxidation of these LDL molecules. So you might have heard of antioxidants, right? Anybody heard of antioxidants? So antioxidants are rich in colorful fruits and vegetables. And colorful fruits and vegetables that provide the antioxidants counters this oxidation. See, the oxidation is oxidant activity. It's from free radicals, and you need antioxidant to avoid that additional stress that moves this cascade, moves this sequence towards blockage. So that becomes a vicious cycle there. When there is more inflammation, it leads to more cholesterol, traffic problems, and so forth. Is that clear? All right. So stages of atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is basically blockage in the artery. That's what it means, clogged arteries. Clogged arteries. So that's a healthy artery. And so I should have asked you a quiz question, but I opened it up already. So I was going to ask you a question. What is the average age when the blockage starts to show up in the Western world? The average age is, I put it up already, it's 12 to 14. So the first evidence of blockage in the artery starts on an average in the West at the age of 12 to 14. How do we know this? We know this by autopsies that are done in hearts on kids who die in traffic accidents and war soldiers' deaths who are teenagers who die in the war. So looking at the amount of buildup in those blockages, we know that the very first change in the artery that starts to build the blockage, it's called fatty streak in a technical lingo, that starts at the age of 12. And then over the next decade or two, this sequence starts to happen in that person unless they start making changes in their diet to a healthy diet. This sequence continues, and then by 30s, they are at risk for a rupture of the blockage, and they can get a heart attack. So anybody who's up 30 and up can get a heart attack at any age. So that's kind of the stage is different stage. So heart disease is pretty much a disease of inflammation. We do know that. There is some data that's coming out. This is American Heart Journal that was publishing 2012, looking at a cohort called MESA, found out that a C-reactive protein in some individuals can be an indicator for inflammation and a risk of heart attack. And we also know that the biological stress that I talked about, the antioxidant or oxidant damage, where antioxidants could help. If the oxidant damage continues, there is progression of heart disease. We do know that from additional evidence. This was published in 2005, Oxidative Stress and Vascular Disease. And we also know that antioxidant-rich foods help open up the arteries. This is data from Nutrition, Metabolism, and Cardiovascular Diseases published in 2012, showing that food selection based on high total antioxidant capacity improves the endothelial function, which means the endothelium can produce the nitric oxide when you need to open up the arteries. When somebody needs that extra blood flow, the endothelium works well. So that is from having a plate full of colorful fruits and vegetables. So we know that heart disease is a disease of inflammation from excess of calories, salt, and sugar. And we also know that heart disease is a disease of deficiency of nutrients. So not having enough plant nutrients such as antioxidants is a cause for heart disease, and inflammation is a cause for heart disease. So this is a kind of a different way of looking at heart disease. We always historically thought of cholesterol heart attack, right? Cholesterol blockage heart attack. And now we understand it in a deeper level, going upstream, looking at what else is happening in that process. This slide is looking at data done by research done by Dr. Esselstyn, showing how a clean, healthy diet that is very high in fruits and vegetables and legumes and whole grains, and very little nuts and seeds, and completely avoiding all animal products, and maybe a little bit of oil or no oil at all, and some group support meetings, can reverse artery. So he shows where, this is an angiogram of an artery where you can see the dye that is showing up here when the pictures are taken after injecting a dye in the artery in the heart. And the dye gets narrowed because there is blockage all around it. The blockage all around it is making this dye flow a narrow flow. And this is after dietary change that it opens up without any cholesterol medications, without any stenting and all of that. So this was published a long time ago in 2001. There's more data about it. He updated the data with the latest study that was published 2016 as well. So we know that the effect of nutrients is so sophisticated and powerful in not only preventing heart attacks, but even reversing existing blockages in the arteries. This is a case study of someone who's 77 years old, who was The patient's son is a friend of mine, so he kind of called me when his dad was told to have a bypass surgery in a matter of a week. The dad did not want to do bypass surgery. He said, at this age, I don't want to have it done. Plus, he also said, there's a lot of cost involved that I cannot manage with that cost or expenditure. So basically, he went on a plant-based diet. Based on his situation where he did not want to go through the procedure. It was recommended by the physician. He just was not in the situation to do that. His cholesterol improved in a matter of 4 months from 256 to 133. His LDL cholesterol improved from 168 to 60. Basically, this is actually 7 years ago, and he's doing well. He's a basketball player. He's not here, but he was an ENT. He is an ENT specialist when he was working. Now he's back to playing basketball and playing with his grandkids and all of that. So that's just one example. There's just more data looking at larger populations that have been published. I just want to show an example of my patient. So when we look at inflammation, heart disease, and diabetes, and I think this is kind of a spectrum I want to show. A standard American diet, which is kind of a sad diet, you can see, leads to most of the existing diseases that we have. From the current state of disease state, moving towards a Mediterranean diet where there is more vegetables, more color showing up in the plate, more vegetables and fruit, starts to decrease the disease risk by 50%. And then when somebody goes to a full plant-based, for the majority of the time, like 90-95% of the time, if somebody is doing plant-based meals, you can pretty much reverse the diseases by 80 to 100% of the cases. So that's a Mediterranean diet picture. That's a whole plant-based diet picture. So what's the difference? Similarities, lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, legumes, chickpeas, and nuts and seeds are the same. There is there's oil here, olive oil. There's no olive oil here. There is fish and a little bit of chicken here, but there's none of them here. Other than that, very similar. So what does a Mediterranean meal plan consist of? Usually at least 5 servings of vegetables a day. Fruit used for snacks or desserts. Red meat is for very rare occasions only. Dairy excludes cheese and butter. Chicken is consumed only once a week. Fish and chickpeas are used primarily for protein. And nuts and seeds are used for protein as well. Olives and olive oil are used regularly. So it's kind of a ballpark of Mediterranean diet. If you go to Greece, anybody been to Greece and Italy? So if you go to different parts of Greece, and if you go to different parts of Italy, even within that Mediterranean regions, there is differences in what they eat. But this kind of is a common theme in all of them, I think. So this is looking at heart muscle with what's called as a PET scan, a positron emission tomography scan. The color that you see, red and yellow, basically indicates the blood flow. Thank you. And that means, like in this location, this person's heart muscle is not getting a blood flow because there is a blocked artery. And after 3 weeks of plant-based nutrition, you can start see that the blood flow is being restored. So looking at different data like this, we know that a whole plant-based diet, after a period of 3 weeks, starts to reverse the circulation changes. So kind of, the current treatments are life-saving, like the procedures that are done called stenting the heart arteries. If a person has a major heart attack where the heart muscle is not pumping enough to move the blood into the circulation, that person could die within a matter of hour or minutes. So that person, it's best to have a stent put in, open up the arteries so that the heart pump can work better. And there are some other situations where somebody has a major heart attack and they're in severe heart failure, where it's important to immediately open up the arteries using a stent so that they can be rescued. Other than those situations, for the most part, heart disease can be dealt with using dietary mechanisms that we know. And bypass is done in some situations where you cannot put a stent. Some of the arteries are not amenable for stenting. Dr. Sauter can maybe talking more about that in his talk. So this is kind of my prescription. You can see the font size is decreasing. Vegetables, the biggest font, which means by the end of the day, The most portions of the day are vegetables, then fruit, legumes, then whole grains, not big on grains, and then nuts and seeds a little bit. Meats, poultry, fish, dairy, eggs, and sugar are very little in the daily diet plan. These are some resources you could use. I'm almost finishing up here. If somebody is looking for how to switch or add more plant-based meals, the American Academy of Dietitians, which is kind of the biggest national organization of dietitians, has a free website resource called vegetariannutrition.net. There are meal plans you can check out on that. Kaiser Permanente is a big healthcare system, mostly in the West Coast, but they are now big on moving towards plant-based as a system. They're educating their doctors to do this more. They have an online free plant-based eating guide. It's a PDF document you can print out. This resource is also free available. There's a free membership, lighter.world. Full disclosure, I am profiled in this website. I don't get any kickbacks for that. It's a friend of mine doing it. Lighter.world. You can check out the health guru section. You'll see my profile. You can click on it and follow my recommendations. You will get weekly recipes, weekly grocery list to your email inbox from that for a free membership. I think that's more than enough for that. And then we have a little video that's going to sum up what I said about the endothelium, and we'll wrap up. The video is designed for kids. It's a cartoon, but I know some of you here who enjoy cartoon. I know you enjoy cartoon. So you will love it. It's very useful because it talks about complex scientific phenomenon, and it breaks it down very simply in a cartoon way. So I love that. Yeah.
Well, hello, Dr. T. What would you like for lunch today? A cheeseburger or a big salad?
I don't know.
Psst. Psst. Dr. T, pick the salad. Pick the salad.
Do I know you?
No, but you should. I'm a little but powerful cell in your body called an endothelial cell. Or you can call me EC.
Why are you here?
To save you from having heart disease or even a heart attack.
Where did you come from?
From your body. Well, actually, from the lining of your blood vessels going to your vital organs like your heart. I'm a superhero healing and protector cell that lives on the wall of the blood vessel. As a healer cell, I dissolve clots and lower blood pressure. As a protector cell, I keep cholesterol and fat from entering the blood vessel wall. Think of me as a traffic cop. I keep your blood flowing smoothly, preventing injury to the blood vessel wall.
And what does this have to do with salads and cheeseburgers?
When you eat unhealthy foods, you consume a lot of sugar, fat, salt, and cholesterol. These injure ECs like me and keep us from doing our job as superhero healers and protectors. When I get injured, cholesterol, fat, and oxygen get trapped in the blood vessel wall. When I'm injured, blood clots form and blood vessels get smaller, so your blood no longer flows smoothly. White blood cells come to your body's defense, but simply cannot clean up all the extra fat and cholesterol in the blood vessel wall. As a result, the white blood cells get larger and larger and larger until they...
Is this it? Am I having the big one? Is this a heart attack?
No, not yet. But if you keep eating unhealthy foods, you will. Dr. T, just remember that heart disease is our #1 killer. And all too often, people don't know they have heart disease until they have a heart attack.
So, AC, what can we do to treat and prevent heart disease?
It's as simple as WFPBD.
What is WFPBD?
WFPBD stands for Whole Food Plant-Based Diet. Instead of an industrialized Western diet that's animal-based and laden with packaged processed foods, we moved to a plant-based diet, eating an abundance of veggies, fruits, and all the fiber-filled, nutrient-rich foods that grow from the ground.
And how does this help reverse heart disease?
When you eat a plant-based diet, you prevent, suspend, and even reverse heart disease in 3 ways. You eat less salt and sugar that hurt ECs, so ECs like me can heal and continue to do our job, which means protecting you. You consume less fat and cholesterol, so your blood vessels won't get clogged up. And you eat more nutrient-packed fruits and vegetables that help white blood cells digest fat and cholesterol, removing them from the blood vessel wall.
But what if I don't have heart disease?
Even if you don't have it now, it doesn't guarantee you won't develop it later. And if you already have heart disease, remember, it's never too late to start eating a healthy diet.
Well, EC, this is an amazing story. Did you really say that even if we have coronary artery disease, we can reverse disease by eating a whole food plant-based diet?
That is correctamundo, Dr. T.
So, EC, is there anything I can do to help you?
Yes. Start a social movement. Tell your friends, family, patients. Tell everyone about the benefits of eating a whole food plant-based diet. I even have a motto to help people remember our conversation. Save your endothelial cells. Save EC. Save EC. Dr. T, say it with me. Save EC.
Okay, Dr. T, will that be a cheeseburger or a health-promoting salad?
Make it a nutrient-packed, delicious salad.
Good choice, Dr. T. One disease-fighting salad coming right up.
So I think it's a funny way, but it's all of it is evidence based just so you know, but it breaks it down in a very simple format to digest it. And so I think I would like to close with that. And Dr. Sauter is going to talk a little bit more about some of the things we talked about and focusing more on the blood pressure aspect of things. We have questions, time for questions. Yeah.
How many of your enrolled physicians are on board with this?
So the question was, how many of the Emerald physicians are on board with that? So when I started working on this 14 years ago, it was new to not only to the patients, but to a lot of the providers as well. Over the years, they are aware of it. I am actually the medical director, so I am in charge of teaching them. So they are on board with that. We have providers in different phases of practicing it. Some are more Mediterranean style, some are more plant-based. Some of them, what they do is they refer patients to me because I do nutrition consults. Carol Penfield is doing nutrition consults. So some of the providers who have a structure within the schedule, daily schedule that is built for doing consults with nutrition, those providers now refer to us, even though they may not be directly dealing with that, they just refer us like a specialist referrals. So, yeah. Yes.
What are the tests that you provide in your normal annual physical that tell somebody about the condition of their liver and how bad it is?
The question was, what is the test that is done on an annual physical, routine physical that could tell about fatty liver or liver issues that comes with the cholesterol? So that's the two numbers that we look for in the liver is ALT and AST. ALT is more specific for liver. It's easy to remember. The second letter is L for liver. So ALT is more specific for liver. When that number is higher, that means the liver is going through some kind of trouble. It could be many things. It may not be just fatty liver doing it, but if somebody has cholesterol, somebody has sugar problems, somebody is overweight, it's more likely than not that the liver numbers are off due to fatty liver. There are other reasons for it, as somebody who is using excess alcohol, somebody is taking some medications, some of the pharmaceutical medications or over-the-counter medications like Tylenol can affect the liver numbers and affect the liver. So it could be any one of those, but the ALT is the specific number I'll look for. Back there. Antioxidants, pills or food? Okay. So the question was, the person who raised the question said she has heard that former heavy smokers should go easy on antioxidants. I never heard that. I think it could mean the pills, the supplements, which I don't recommend anyway. Antioxidant foods in the form of whole foods like fruits and vegetables and legumes and cacao powder, those things are safe regardless of whether somebody has a smoking history or not. Yeah. Yeah, some of the spices like turmeric are high in antioxidant capacity as well. So spices and herbs, some of the herbs are anti-inflammatories like ginger, um, rosemary has been proven to have anti-inflammatory effects as well. Yes. You. So the question was regarding cutting out dairy products. The question was, what if it is yogurt with probiotics made from sheep or goat yogurt, sheep yogurt? So from what we know, I would still recommend keeping that as not as a regular meal pattern. If somebody is cutting out dairy, it means cutting out all forms of yogurt as well. If somebody is cutting back on it, it's cutting back all forms of yogurt. That's what it means. Yes. And then one more question, and we'll end with that. Yeah.
I've been on a plant-based diet completely for the last 8 years
Mhm.
since having bypass surgery. When I had an initial consultation with my surgeon, nobody ever mentioned the use of trying to reverse through a assisted diet, reverse the damage. So the push was to have surgery at that time
Mhm.
without any other options. First of all, are they giving options? Are they giving plant-based diet for reversal as an option before recommending surgeries
Mhm.
today?
Mhm.
And second question, back to the studies that you've done on children, 12 to 14. Was that coronary arteries that you checked, or was it arteries throughout the body that found the edema?
I'll first address the second question. So there were two questions. One was the studies that looked at children's arteries getting blocked, the beginning of the blockage happening at the age of 12 to 14. The question was whether it was the artery in the heart or was it artery elsewhere in the body. They were looking at autopsies of the heart arteries. And which means like if there is a blockage in one area of the artery in one organ like heart, it's very likely that the same mechanism is happening in another artery like in the brain artery. So it's all the same trees, branches everywhere. So when there's disease in one branch, it's very likely there's disease in another branch. So that's the studies looking at that was on the heart arteries of the young kids. The other question was, how much of this disease reversal using plant-based nutrition is now a standard of care in terms of recommendations for somebody who is recommended to have a bypass surgery? So the cardiology field is 2017 was a big year for the cardiology field to start to embrace this idea. There is no structure yet built into using disease reversal nutrition therapies yet. For prevention, there is more structure built into that. When I say structure, let's compare bypass surgery, right? In bypass surgery, there has been studies done, there has been standards and guidelines created for that. and there is training involved for cardiologists to go through that, or cardiothoracic surgeons to go through managing those patients. So those standards and guidelines and training and reimbursement and protocols are built for therapies like stenting and bypass surgeries. We are in a phase where that is emerging for dietary strategies. The good point about this is that the rigor that is needed for standards and guidelines for bypass surgery is different because the risks are higher in those interventions. So the people could die on the surgical table, right? So the guidelines, the protocols, and the rigor of the guidelines and the protocols are stronger and higher because the risks involved in those interventions are higher. Compared to that, dietary guidelines are simpler, the risks are very minimal. The concern there yet is whether the patient can, how much of a structure and support we have for the patient to sustain that behavior change long term. But currently, last year, 2017, the American Journal of Cardiology, the editorial in July, I believe, was as mentioned clearly about how the need to embrace healthy plant-based nutrition is an important piece going forward. So this is an emerging topic, and it's ready to launch itself. Yeah, I'm going to have another question on there because you already had, and then I'll come back to you.
Should the fruits and vegetables that we eat be only organic?
The question, you might have heard the question already. The fruits and vegetables that we eat, should it be organic? My answer is, I've seen patients in so many different levels of eating fruits and vegetables in different spectrum. I have patients who are completely plant-based, wholesome, organic, and I have patients who seen no broccoli yet in their life. So for the person who hasn't seen the broccoli yet, I don't care if it is organic or not. As long as they eat it, I'm fine with that. So, it's really about just getting those antioxidants in. And the cool thing is, when it's not organic, you worry about pesticides, you worry about chemicals in that. What does the chemical do in the body, right? The chemicals go into the body fights it, and then the body produces something called free radicals, which are the biological stress that I showed, which are the oxidants, for which you need antioxidants, which they're getting from that non-organic broccoli or fruit. So it comes with a built-in package of solution, which is the antioxidant. So I don't care really. I mean, I would prefer them to use organic whenever possible, but not everybody could do it every time because it's less taxing on the body when we do organic. Yes, but not everybody can achieve that all the time. We'll have to come back to your question one-on-one later on. So we're going to move on to the next topic. Thank you for your patience.